my mouth and the meditations of our heart be always acceptable to you, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer.
Amen.
Psalm 84. How dear to me is your dwelling, O Lord of hosts. For one day in your courts is better than 1,000 in my own room. As I was looking at these readings, one of the things that those of you who have been following along realize that this is the 87th week with Jesus talking about being the bread of life. It goes on and on and on. But if we think of the way the Old Testament brings us into this thought, which I'm not sure if the lectionary people meant us to do this or not, I want you to think first and quietly think about a holy place. Doesn't mean that anybody else considers it holy, or it could be a place that everybody considers holy. It doesn't matter. Get in mind a place that you consider holy, and I mean a place. Now think about what makes that holy for you, or when did you first realize it was holy, or when did you first call it holy, this place? We do sanctify places in different ways, and one of the modern ways that we do this now, that is within my lifetime anyway, in this country, is when there's an auto accident and somebody dies, right? We immediately get a cross in the area. When people were shot in a church in Charleston, South Carolina, immediately the memorial came about. We do this because we think there's some power in places. And I would venture to say, for those of you who are visiting, and for those of you who live here, we consider this a powerful place. That's what we're here for. We're here because something has drawn us to this place. There may be one or two people here who would drag along with their feet frozen and wondering what the heck they're doing here. But most of us are here because we're drawn to this place. And for myself, when I think about holy places, there's a couple of them. And one is from childhood. For those of you who don't know, I grew up fairly close to Niagara Falls. And I know people who have been to Niagara Falls go, wow, is that a holy place? But if you're there fairly often, you find the quiet places away from the tourists. And there is a place near the falls, out on Goat Island, that I consider a holy place. And I do a pilgrimage to there from time to time, because that's the first place that I really felt this connection, a connection to God. I felt that God was moving through me, through the water. I felt one with the water, one with the rocks, one with God. I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but there was a sense of oneness and a sense of the holy and a sense that I didn't deserve this. A sense that, I kind of wanted to throw myself on the ground and say, I'm not worthy to receive this gift. When I think of a holy place, I think that's part of it. Another place that I have found holy, or did find holy, I guess I would say, is I did go to visit the Shrine of Guadalupe, and I don't know if anybody's been to that, but there's sort of a modern basilica, but there's also the place you walk up the hill, and as you're walking up the hill, there are pilgrims from all over. Some are crawling up that hill, some are going up on their knees up that hill. They're all praying. They're all keeping all kinds of things in their mind. They have possible milagros, like they're carrying a little foot in their hand because they need a foot healing, or they're carrying a heart because they need a heart healing. And then we get to the top of that, and there's these little girls dressed like brides receiving their first communion. What a holy place. They look like angels, sort of, in this holy place as they were receiving communion. I'm sort of laughing because the worst part about it was, at that point, as these little girls are receiving their first communion in this, we had the German tourists going, they just don't know. They don't know. They were on holy ground. So to me, what makes a place like that holy is probably because so many people have considered it holy. And when you're surrounded by this sense of the holy, it sort of is a little bit catching. But there's also, I walked into the modern basilica and looked at the actual piece of cloth that has the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe on it, and I felt nothing. And everybody else was so moved by this, and I'm thinking, looks like a painting on cloth to me. It looks like nothing. So what is it that moves some people about a place and doesn't move other people about a place? Think about that. As you think about your holy place, this is the participation part. What makes it holy for you? Anybody? What makes a place holy to you?
Just a sense.
It feels sacred.
Sacred? Those are kind of those boundary words, right? That we really didn't understand.
It's a good place to pray.
It's a good place to pray. Yeah, you kind of feel like you want to pray there, don't you?
Sense of connectedness.
There's connectedness.
Peace.
Yeah.
Sense of peace.
Sense of peace. Yeah.
It reminds me of my place in all of this.
Yeah. It's okay.
I always think of cloud of witnesses, especially around the cemetery and
Oh, yeah.
the people
In
that
this place.
know the spirits.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in this Old Testament reading, Solomon, kind of David, and then Solomon decided, we're going to have this holy place, and we're going to make this place holy. And in the chapter before our long chapter, which actually is only part of it also, is the long description of this holy place, this temple, and its building. All of this gold and all of this. And this is the place to bring the Ark of the Covenant. Remember the Ark of the Covenant? And it has the tablets and the manna in it. It seems to still exist at that time. And they're going to be placed in this temple. And so this is going to be a holy place. And they declare this is a holy place. And this is where you will encounter God. The part that's left out here is if you need forgiveness for something, if you have famine or whatever, if you go to this place and pray, it will be taken care of. God will hear you for sure. I consider this the beginning of our downfall. For those of you who don't know, we rent this building, and those who are here now want that to go on, to not own a building, because buildings tend to get in the way of spirituality at times, where the vestry, the bishop's committee would talk about nothing except the plumbing or the furnace or the painting that needs to be done or whatever. Or buildings stand empty 6.5 days a week or whatever. So we're kind of going along with what I consider the most spiritual now, is to not own buildings for spiritual places. Mm-hmm. But most of the world doesn't feel that way, do they? And what is it about human beings? There's something very human in this, isn't there? We'll go back to that thing, if somebody dies by the roadside, we start doing a shrine. We also went to Greece, and every place that somebody's prayed, somebody's put up a little shrine. There's these little shrines all over Greece. And it's a lot of mariners and such, and they're dedicated to this saint or that saint, or this dead sailor or that dead sailor. And so, what is it about us that wants to build a shrine? Remember when Jesus in the Transfiguration, what did they want to do? Build a shrine. They wanted to build a booth. They wanted to build a shrine. What is it about us that wants to contain this presence of God? It's really a question, and I want you to leave with that question. What is it about you that wants to contain that Spirit of God? The other connection that I have with that today is this Ephesians reading, which sounds very militaristic. But it's also another way of thinking about the presence of God. You're putting on the whole armor of God. You're surrounded by God. You're encased with God. And so that you are protected. That's you individually, personally, as you go out into the world, your protection. But then the third way is the way that Jesus suggests. And that's taking God within you. And I have said this before, if I wasn't an Episcopalian, I would be a Quaker. And the Quakers, one of the things they uphold is that sense of God within, the light of God within. And I think that that's what Jesus was talking about. Not that you are born without God, and unless we baptize you and get you to swallow that bread and that wine, then you don't have God within you. But rather, you're born with that God within you. And we have to be reminded constantly that God is within us. As a matter of fact, God is within everyone. Even the worst criminal, our worst enemies, God is within those people. But again, look at the psalm. It says, one day in your courts is better than 1,000 in my own room. It's a way in which we build our own rooms, and we wall ourselves off from God. We either shut God out or shut God into a hard little knot inside ourselves. We wall God off and we say, I'm not going to let you in, God, one way or another. I'm too busy. I don't like that person. That person can't possibly be a good person. We wall ourselves off in all kinds of ways. And Jesus is saying to us, let's take God once again within us and open that up and see the God that's in each other. So I think the moral lesson for today is a fairly simple one. I think it's a Sunday school lesson. Treat one another as you would wish to be treated yourself, right? To be able to see the God in another person, to see God in another person, is to be able to treat them with a kind of dignity that we would treat this golden altar or the Ark of the Covenant or that holy place you were talking about as you stand in front of another person to feel, here, I'm standing in the presence of the holy. To stand in front of your worst enemy and say, here, I'm standing in the presence of the holy. And this demands my prayer, my presence, my adoration. I think the world would change if we really recognized the presence of God throughout the whole universe, but especially in each other. How dear to me is your dwelling place, O Lord